The ceasefire between Israel and Iran has officially come into effect at 7 a.m. local time after 5 waves of attacks from Iran. Russian President Vladimir Putin denounced the North Atlantic Treaty Organization's provocations in view of its attempts to trigger an arms race in the world. The Supreme Court of the United States upholds President Donald Trump's decision to resume deportations of migrants to third countries. Hello and welcome to From the South, from the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba. My name is Laura Rodriguez. We begin with the news. The ceasefire between Israel and the Islamic Republic of Iran entered into force. Minutes earlier, several Iranian missiles hit different areas of occupied Palestine. The cessation of hostilities began at 7:30 a.m. Tehran time and at 7 a.m. Tel Aviv time. Previously, Iran launched 6 waves of missiles against several Israeli cities, including Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, and Beersheba. In the latter, the impact of a large-caliber missile left at least 11 dead and 22 wounded. Although rescue efforts continue, the death toll could increase. The city of Beersheba hosts a technology park where high-tech projects are developed, and the intelligence and command headquarters of the Zionist army is located. Beersheba is a training center for soldiers who are later integrated into the country's technology industry. During his TV show Con Maduro Más, the Venezuelan president Nicolás Maduro reiterated his call to international leaders to hold a peace summit against war. The Venezuelan president referred having delivered letters to Chinese President Xi Jinping, Russian President Vladimir Putin, U.S. President Donald Trump, and other dozens of world leaders and heads of state with the aim of holding a summit led by a coordination of international mechanisms, such as the Arab League and the BRICS nations. The Venezuelan proposal seeks to, in this way, restore the discussion over the importance of respect to international law in hopes of avoiding the risk of nuclear war that threatens the region and the world and is driven by the colonial aspirations of the Zionist state of Israel.
This call for a cessation of hostilities must constitute the first step towards a comprehensive political solution built on dialogue, legality, and respect among states. The proposal for a summit for peace and against war responds to the urgency of facing the growing danger of a conflict that could drag humanity into the abyss of a nuclear war.
In this regard, President Nicolás Maduro reaffirmed Venezuela's commitment to achieve world peace based on the principles of the United Nations.
Venezuela reaffirms its conviction that only an inclusive approach based on respect for international law and sovereign equality among nations can guarantee true peace in West Asia. The peoples of the world expect us to stop the war and to achieve a lasting peace based on the principles of the United Nations Organization. We have an impossible duty to achieve responsible collective action in favor of human existence in all corners of the planet. Confident that this call will be heard and will contribute humbly from Venezuela. Confident that this call will be heard and will contribute to forge a firm international consensus to stop war, contain the nuclear threat, and build an architecture of peace based on justice. I renew the assurances of my highest consideration and respect, Nicolas Maduro Moros, from the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela.
Earlier on Monday, the Iranian armed forces launched a missile barrage against a U.S. military base in Qatar in response to Washington's strikes targeting Iranian nuclear facilities. Qatari authorities indicated that several explosions were reported in the capital, Doha, where the United States military base Al Udeid is located. The Iranian operation comes after the Qatari authorities announced the temporary suspension of air traffic in the country in order to ensure the safety of citizens, residents, and visitors. The U.S. base Al Udeid in Qatar is the largest in the region and houses a forward headquarters of the U.S. Central Command and its Air Force. Al Udeid U.S. military base in Qatar, also known as the Abu Naklam Airport, is one of two military bases southwest of Doha and the largest in the entire region. It is host to a forward headquarters for the United States Central Command as well as its air forces. The base has been central to past U.S. military operations in Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan. According to local press reports, the base housed more than 10,000 troops of the international coalition forces against the Islamic State and more than 100 operational aircraft. And now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. Russian President Vladimir Putin denounced the North Atlantic Treaty Organization's provocations in view of its attempts to trigger an arms race in the world. In a recent speech to military academy graduates, the Russian leader reported that NATO plans to announce the launch of a large-scale program to further increase the alliance's capabilities, adding that to implement it, the military budgets of NATO countries will be increased. For its part, President Putin said Russia will continue to develop its armed forces as a guarantee of its sovereignty, while informing that extra regional forces were involved in the Middle East conflict.
At the next NATO summit, it is planned to announce the start of a large-scale program to further increase the capabilities of the alliance. To implement it, the military budgets of NATO countries will be increased. Meanwhile, the bloc's members are already spending more on military purposes than all the countries of the world combined. From this, it is clear who is really provoking global militarization and the arms race.
Over the past 24 hours, the Israeli army has killed at least 39 Palestinians in Gaza in an airstrike as part of its ongoing genocidal campaign in the region. Health sources reported that the Israeli army wounded 317 people in various locations throughout the Gaza Strip during the attacks. They also noted that several victims are still buried in the rubble and in the streets, and that ambulance and civil protection teams cannot reach them due to Israeli aggression. Since the beginning of the Israeli occupation aggression on October 7, 2023, the number of dead in the Gaza Strip has risen to 55,998, and the number of wounded has risen to at least 131,559, most of whom are children and women. Meanwhile, in the Gaza Strip, the Hamas resistance movement battled Israeli occupation forces in Tel al-Mintar. Snipers shot down an Israeli soldier east of Shujaya neighborhood, east of the city, and shelled Israeli army vehicles positioned there. As part of the Stone of David series of operations, the Al-Qassam brigades released footage of a complex ambush against Israeli military vehicles on the supply line in the Al-Asana area east of Khan Yunis. According to statistics, more than 42 Israeli soldiers have been killed since early June. Also in Palestine, food distribution workers in the Sikkim area of the Gaza Strip face threats of arrest and violence by the Zionist regime of Israel. Amidst bans on entry and distribution of basic supplies, Gaza attend aid centers despite the presence of occupation forces in order to access supplies. It should be noted that Israeli forces keep the border crossings closed and prohibit the entry of international humanitarian aid, leaving thousands of people without access to food and medicine. Meanwhile, the international community continues to press for the opening of humanitarian corridors. The United States Columbia University graduate and pro-Palestinian activist Mammud Khalil, who was jailed after student protests denouncing the U.S. support to Israel, denounced upon his release the actions of his alma mater.
Freely next to you all, I'm grateful to my wife Noor, whose support, love, and care has kept me upright. And I'm grateful to every single person who stood by me during this time. I must call the hypocrisy of Columbia University, a university that just 2 weeks ago said that they want to protect their international students. While over 100 years later, I haven't received a single call from this university.
British police clashed with activists of the Palestine Action group on Monday as the government moves to proscribe the group as a terrorist organization. Hundreds of protesters gathered at London's Trafalgar Square, waving Palestinian flags and holding placards as the group's leaders called for an emergency mobilization in response to the government's plans. The Palestine Action protest comes just days after two of its members broke into Royal Air Force Base Norton and damaged two military planes in a stunt condemned by members of parliament. Home Security Secretary Yvette Cooper announced she has decided to proscribe Palestine Action as a terrorist group and will lay an order before Parliament next week to make membership and support for them illegal. In other news, the President of Mexico, Claudia Shamban, expressed that any ruler of the Mexican Republic must comply with the provisions of the Constitution regarding foreign policy. In her usual press conference, the Mexican president answered this after being questioned about her position regarding the genocide of the Palestinian people by the State of Israel, and stressed that this has been condemned by her and her administration. Likewise, the head of state stated that according to the provisions of Article 89 of the Mexican Constitution, each ruler of the nation must follow certain foreign policy guidelines. Moreover, the president stated that Mexico must be a guarantor of peace, of the self-determination of the peoples, and condemned any external harm that may be inflicted on the civilian population. We have a second short break coming up before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back. The Supreme Court of the United States upheld President Donald Trump's decision to resume deportations of migrants to third countries. The justices lifted an injunction requiring the government to give the migrants an opportunity to explain the risks they would face in those destinations. In this regard, the defense warns that they could face torture or even death if they are sent to countries that are not their own and where they have no support networks. On the other hand, liberal justices Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, and Kentucky Brown Jackson harshly criticized the majority's ruling, accusing the court of rewarding illegality. It is worth noting that the ruling also represents a new victory for Trump in his agenda of mass deportations. In this context, on Sunday, a judge in Tennessee ordered the immediate release of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a Salvadorian citizen. This ruling further undermines the legitimacy of the United States government's inhumane policies against migrants. Judge Barbara Holmes denied the government's motion to detain the citizen, confirming that he will receive the due process to which he is entitled. As you may recall, the Donald Trump administration expelled the citizen along with more than 200 Venezuelan migrants in collaboration with El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele. The hearing for his release is scheduled for Wednesday. We go to Panama. Anti-government protesters in Bocas del Toro City face persecution and rights violations by the country's security forces. Protesters reported that police forces are arresting, beating, and shooting unarmed people and indigenous groups in the country. They also condemned how the government of José Raúl Mulino justifies its repressive measures with alleged acts of vandalism, but the reality is that members of the national police are the ones committing these actions, after taking food from stores and communities. In recent days, a young man was killed while exercising his right to protest, an action that led to the escalation of the Panamanian people's struggle despite the executive's obstacles. Panama's National Civil Protection System reported that heavy rains caused landslides and flooding. According to the official report, at least 304 families were affected by more than 30 incidents related to falling trees, structural collapses, and roof collapses. SINAPROC's Director Omar Smith highlighted the work of the response team, which continues to carry out damage assessments and needs analysis despite the adverse weather conditions. The situation is of growing concern as weather forecasts indicate that more rainfall is expected in the coming days, which could aggravate the risk of flooding and new landslides. Meanwhile, in Guatemala, 18 people died as a result of the rainy season in the territory. According to the National Coordinator for Disaster Reduction, the fatal victims derived from landslides, trees falling on houses, and river flooding. It also stated that 605 emergency calls were attended, while 5,227 people were affected. 459 houses are at risk of collapse, 80 are slightly damaged, 926 are moderately damaged, and 40 are severely damaged. In view of this situation, the institution called on the population to implement preventive measures in order to safeguard lives and reduce the impact of the events this season. In other news, Colombian President Gustavo Petro demanded Monday the release of 57 soldiers who had been kidnapped by civilians used by armed groups in the department of Cauca. Colombian authorities reported that the soldiers were kidnapped while patrolling the municipality of El Tambo, a strategic region in the struggle against drug trafficking. According to the report, about 200 civilians were involved in the abduction, who were used as a shield by the armed groups to carry out the kidnapping and undermine the actions of the security forces. The Colombian president called on the farmers of the zone to disassociate themselves from the illegal groups and to promote dialogue with the state. On the other hand, the Colombian Minister of Defense called the abduction a serious violation of international humanitarian law and human rights.
This is not a simple kidnapping, it is a serious violation of international humanitarian law and human rights. They have also used the civilian population as a human shield, putting the lives of innocent people at risk to prevent our military and police from providing security conditions for the arrival of social investment.
The 27th Santo Domingo International Book Fair 2025 will be held in the Dominican Republic with a special focus on children's literature. The event, considered the most important in the country, will pay tribute to historian Frank Moya Pons for his contributions to the study of national history and the cultural identity of the Dominican Republic. The Minister of Culture, Roberto Ángel Salcedo, announced that the fair will be held from September 25 to October 5th at the Plaza de la Cultura Juan Pablo Duarte. This year's event is expected to bring together numerous national and international authors, making it a platform for exploring new literary trends and promoting cultural dialogue. A total of 119 cultural objects that had been looted in 1897 were officially returned to Nigeria, including Benin bronzes along with royal plaques and insignia. These artifacts, most of which were housed in a museum in Leiden, were stolen by British soldiers at the end of the 19th century. Today, during the handover ceremony, Nigeria's Prime Minister of Arts, Culture, Tourism and Creative Economy, Jana Tumusawa, stressed that this return not only represents the return of the objects, but also the restitution of the dignity of the country. Since 2022, Nigeria has been requesting the return of hundreds of relics, achieving the return of 103 objects that were in museums in London and the United States.
Return of 119 of these treasures is not just a restitution of items, it is a restitution of our dignity, of our identity, of our values, of our ideals, and the shared humanity that binds us as a people.
We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Laura Rodriguez. Thank you for watching.